back to the Tea and a Butty podcast. I'm Dominic.
And I'm Erica.
And today's episode is going to be about the Daniel Craig years of James Bond.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all over.
It's all over now for Daniel.
Yeah.
His last film, No Time to Die, was released in America a couple of days ago.
Mm-hmm. We just went and saw it. We're not going to spoil it for you.
No, but you do have to go see it.
Yeah.
It's quite epic.
Let us know whether you've already seen it. And
yeah, let us know.
If you want to send us a DM, then Dominic's perfectly happy to talk about.
We'll talk about
things.
It in DMs. Talk about
but
things.
But yeah, I mean, we won't go too much into this particular film, just for those who.
Yeah, we'll just talk about the characters and his tenure as James Bond, which is, I think, it's the longest.
Yeah,
he's been James Bond since 2005.
I mean, I was...
So, 15, 16 years.
I was surprised this was only the fifth film. I was like,
it's only his fifth film.
Yeah, I was like, how could this be only his fifth film? It seems like he's been James Bond forever.
Yeah, well, compared to, people like Sean Connery...
Who did how many?
He did seven. He did 6 official Eon ones.
Okay.
And the 7th he did was unofficial. Which was Never Say Never Again. Roger did 7. Yeah, it was Live and Let Die, To a View to a Kill.
So Roger still holds the
record, yes.
Record, yeah.
For most Bond films.
Yeah.
Played by any actor, because it went, in the films it went...
Roger Moore, that is, for anyone who...
Roger Moore,
isn't sure.
Yeah, Roger Moore. Sean Connery was the first one. Then George Lazenby did 1.
Mm-hmm.
And then Connery came back for Diamonds Are Forever. Then Roger Moore took over, and he was Bond forever. And he was Bond for, well, I think all the fans agree he was Bond for a little bit too long.
Yeah.
And I mean, Daniel, we're probably glad that it was his final film, because he's getting up there in age, and it's like...
Yeah.
It's getting to the point where it's not really believable anymore. But, at the same time... 60 isn't what it was back in the 80s.
Yeah.
And I mean, by A View to a Kill, Roger he'd had a facelift and everything, but he still looked...
Back up, it was Roger Moore, and then...
Timothy Dalton, who only did 2 films.
Just 2, okay.
And then there was a legal battle for 6 years, where there was no Bond films, and, it was kind of hanging in the balance and everything. Then they... For whatever reason, Dalton's third film never came about, so he was released from his contract. Or he didn't renew it anyway.
Yeah.
And so they signed up Pierce Brosnan, who was originally going to be James Bond after Roger Moore, but he couldn't because of Remington Steele.
Okay, yeah.
They signed him up because they went with Timothy Dalton, but he couldn't do it because he had a project on, so they went with Pierce Brosnan, but then I think it was NBC said, we're going to sue you if you break the contract.
Yeah.
So he couldn't do it. But he got his chance again with Goldeneye. He did 4 films.
And then there was a break again, wasn't there?
2 years, though.
Oh, really? Why do the the Pierce Brosnan films seem so, dated compared to the Daniel Craig, for there to only be 2 years in between?
It was an old format they were still using. And when you look back, it wasn't really the greatest period of the James Bond.
Oh, God. Yeah. I mean, in theory,
Goldeneye was good. Tomorrow Never Dies was okay, but then it started getting a bit too much it's a little bit formulaic now, and it's a little bit not what people are into.
It just seemed so 90s.
And Die Another Day was... Well, Die Another Day was early CGI.
Yeah.
So early CGI was used in it, and it didn't look that great. And, there was several scenes, and the writing was a little bit off, and people didn't like Pierce Brosnan's portrayal so much. I mean, there's going to be people who grew up with him who love him. But...
I mean, we've done a James Bond podcast.
Yeah, we've done a James Bond podcast before.
So if you want to hear us talk more about the past James Bonds or just James Bond in general, go back and listen to that, because I think I've mentioned before that I was not into James
you were
Bond.
not a James Bond fan before you met me. No.
Yeah, no.
You saw them on TV and were like, oh, get out of here with that James Bond.
Every Thanksgiving,
get out of here.
It seems like every Thanksgiving they would run a James Bond marathon. Yeah. So, my aunt and uncle would come over for Thanksgiving, and my uncle would turn it on that, and so it would be on in the background. I mean, I saw them. My grandfather was a fan. I was into the idea of James Bond, I guess, because, like, seeing Pierce Brosnan as James Bond in my head, I was like, oh, yeah, he looks like James Bond, and I can clearly remember when they cast Daniel Craig, even though I was not someone who sat and watched Bond films. Yeah. I just thought, what in God's name? Why would they cast him? He doesn't look like James Bond. He's all craggly and blonde, and what is going on? No.
And he was badly dressed, too. That's what everybody says.
Badly dressed.
He used to wear all these ill-fitting suits and everything.
Oh, everybody did. Everyone was badly dressed in the 90s.
It wasn't the 90s, though. It was the mid-2000s.
Before.
Mid-00s. Before what?
Well, mid-00s, yeah, it wasn't much better.
Mid-noughties, as they call it.
Go back and...
Because what are we in now? The teens?
The 20s.
Oh, they're in the 20s now. We're in the 20s, yes. Oh, the teens, yeah. I mean, turn of the century. Let's call it turn of the century.
He had a rough time when he got cast as James Bond, too.
Well,
people just ripped
the thing
him.
Is,
not just me. It wasn't only me who didn't like him cast as James Bond.
The problem is it was a case of, after Die Another Day, everybody was expecting Pierce Brosnan to return for another film.
Yeah.
In 2004, because they usually make them. But when they came back in 95, they were making them every 2 years. It was GoldenEye was 95, Tomorrow Never Dies was 97. It was a regular schedule.
Yeah.
World Is Not Enough. Then a year break and then another one, and it's what they did in the 70s and 80s too.
Yeah.
It was like they'd make a movie, have a year break, another movie.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, I think Pierce Brosnan talked about it, he goes, I was negotiating my salary for the next one.
Oh, yeah.
And I was doing After the Sunset, and we were in, I don't know if it was Ernest Hemingway's house or someone's house.
Yeah.
He says, oh yeah, and I was going back and forth with the producers, Barbara and Michael. And, they called me up and they said, thanks a lot. You were a great James Bond.
Oh, no!
And Barbara was crying and all this kind of stuff, And that was it. And I considered myself fired from the role. And I was just like, what?
Yeah.
I was like, what are they doing? What are they going to do? Because I guess someone had gotten to them and said, yeah, Die Another Day was, the worst of the series yet.
Yeah.
It was kind of...
Is that the one with the woman who killed people with her thighs?
No, that was GoldenEye.
Oh, God.
No, that was his first film. That's what saved the franchise, if you ask the fans, That's the one that saved the franchise and kept it going. And then after Die Another Day, they just fired Pierce Brosnan. And they went a different way, and I think he's the only actor. Even after even George Lazenby didn't get fired.
Oh no!
George Lazenby walked away from the whole circus. And Roger left of his own accord because they kept offering him money, and he was like, "Yeah, I'm coming back. Yeah, I'll come back." And he was like, "Right, okay, after this one, I don't want to come back anymore. That's the end of it."
Yeah.
And so they cast Daniel Craig. And everybody just instantly, because the internet was, it wasn't in its infancy, but it was starting to gain.
Yeah.
It was more or less the same as it is today. There was forums, there was a sort of social media out. I think YouTube and Twitter was starting up, and there was forums anyway, and they just went mental.
Yeah.
About, oh, this is terrible, and then there was petitions made, to like, oh, stop stop Daniel Craig from being cast as James Bond. Stop this movie. It's going to be terrible. It's going to be terrible. Oh, and they were just going really bad on the hate.
Yeah.
For him,
Mm-hmm.
And apparently on the set of when they were filming Casino Royale, someone showed him. Showed Daniel what was being said, and there was a website. They set up a website and everything. Saying,
oh God, yes,
and all this, and because they did this like documentary and just. Before,
oh yeah, what is that called? Because we just watched that not that long ago.
Being James Bond, I think it was,
and it's on Apple Plus.
It was it was on Apple Plus.
Yeah. So go watch that if you're a fan.
It was like a retrospective of Daniel's time as Bond.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no. And he was just like, it really got me down. And I thought, what have I taken on here,
Yeah.
But then he was just like, you know what? All these fellow actors was like, you know what? We're just going to make this a bloody good James Bond film and we're going to show them.
Yeah.
And they did. Casino Royale was like, it was absolutely amazing because they went back to that was the first time they got to use Casino Royale. The source material. For some reason, it was tied up in legal rights for years, and they couldn't use it.
They made a silly movie out of it, didn't they?
Yeah, someone got hold of it and made a silly
like
movie
with
David Niven in 1967.
Yeah.
We've
seen that.
It was terrible because it had like 13 directors, and so there was the plot was just all over the place, and it was badly edited, and the music was great, but it was like what is going on in this movie?
In that Apple Plus Apple TV Plus, whatever documentary that we just mentioned, they say in there that someone leaked a photo of Daniel coming out of the ocean.
Oh, yeah.
It was like a play on the Ursula Andress
and Dr. No, yeah.
He's coming out of the water, because he's the new Bond and whatever. I think it is toward the beginning.
It's toward the beginning of the film, when he's going to Solange's house.
They leak a photo of him coming out of the water, and he's all, dripping and glistening in the sun, and he's got his little teeny swim shorts on and everything, and he's like all beefy.
He's all beefed up and everything. Because when they
and then everybody was like, "Oh, actually,"
when he was announced at the press conference, it was like there was this big announcement they were going to have, and they had him on a speedboat. I think it was like a Royal Navy speedboat or something.
Oh,
and and then they said to him, "Oh, you have to wear a life jacket."
Oh, no.
And you have to hold on. And, he was coming down the speedboat, so everybody was like, "Oh, that's not James Bond. He's wearing a life jacket and he's holding on. And he looks all weedy and his suit doesn't fit him. He looks all his greasy hair." And, he's, because, it was just kind of like, he was just like, oh, God,
Yeah.
So, in the press conference, I mean, if you watch Pierce Brosnan's portrayal, at his press conference, he didn't have a clue. He was just like, "Oh, so what are you going to bring to the James Bond franchise?" He goes, "Oh, well, me, I'm new," and 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 he's just like, he hadn't a clue.
Yeah,
So Daniel did a little bit of a better job at his, but they still wanted to hate him.
And that one was a good film.
And
if you guys have
the
seen
next
it,
one, who they cast, it's going to start up all over again,
Yeah, I think we'll get to that in a minute. Like toward the end of this, we'll talk about the future.
The future.
but yeah, that his first film was good.
Yeah.
I think and then the next one was okay for me because what Dominic did to introduce me to James Bond, I think we just started with a random one like maybe Diamonds Are Forever or something like that. From Russia with Love. Yeah.
I didn't do Dr. No for some reason. I don't know why.
We just watched a random one.
I did that. I was trying to do it in chronological order.
And then we started from the beginning. So my James Bond education went from the beginning all the way through.
Because you didn't want to watch them at first. I remember you were like, "Oh, I don't want to watch this. This is
because
I was watching boys. Oh, I don't like it." Ugh.
And watching it, I was like, "Oh God, it's just like Austin Powers." It's just like Austin
Powers just ripped everything out of James Bond, you know.
Almost directly, actually. But anyway, so watching it from beginning to end, sort of like in a binge-a-thon.
A Bondathon.
A Bondathon.
As Alan Partridge would say.
Yeah.
It's a bank holiday Bondathon.
Then you get to the Daniel Craig films, and I think the first two had already come out, or just the first one.
The first one had already just come out.
Okay, so then when we watched the second, the first one, I was like, okay, it feels Bondish. But then the second one, for me, it was not a bad film. You're not crazy about it.
It's okay.
But
I mean, it's going to gain appreciation over time.
Well, to me, the problem with his films, having just seen all the earlier ones, was that it just felt almost a little bit like any other action film, rather than a James Bond film. You know what I mean?
It was, yeah.
And then when I thought about it, the first one was a little bit sort of the same kind of way too, because all these action films since the original James Bonds have been modeled off of James Bond. So they all have like kind of a comic book type of villain, anyway. And then a lot of action, a lot of shoot 'em ups, and a lot of car chases. So I don't know,
gunfights,
Yeah.
So
but I think you said it was Daniel Craig who wanted to add in like the James Bondy elements, right? Like the gadgets.
He had a lot more control. When he came aboard, Barbara made him a producer. I don't know if he was producer on Quantum or Skyfall. I think Skyfall definitely, but yeah, no, I think by the time of Skyfall, he was like, I want to add more James Bondy elements. I want Moneypenny and Q.
That one was an anniversary film, also, right? Was it like the 50th anniversary?
Yeah. So it was the 50th anniversary, and it's a great film, Skyfall, and it received so much praise. Like No Time to Die is getting that too.
It was so good. Skyfall is like the definitive James Bond film, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I like it. I loved it when it came out, but as time goes on, I'm kind of like, it's kind of going down.
What?
No, not like in a way like, oh, I don't like it anymore, but I'm like No Time to Die has maybe replaced it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or, I could think, oh, Casino Royale is better than it,
Yeah. I don't know. For me, Skyfall was just like everything James Bond is supposed to be, but modernized. You know what I mean? Like,
yes.
Not so kind of silly or fantastical or whatever. And there's a series of books that Dominic has, called...
Oh, that's right, yeah.
What are they?
The Young Bond books.
The Young Bond series by Charlie Higson.
Yeah.
And I had read all of those, too, before I saw Skyfall. And it sort of tells the backstory of James Bond. Obviously, it doesn't have anything to do with Ian Fleming.
Well, yeah.
But he used the Ian Fleming, model, right?
Yeah, because... And he used, there was a biography of James Bond written by someone else, and I don't think they got Fleming's approval on it.
Yeah.
But someone wrote up a definitive biography of him from his birth to his... Because, the references were made in the novels, too. His backstory and stuff, but he didn't really expand upon it.
Yeah.
Because he died in 1964, Ian Fleming, and he just never got around to doing it.
I mean, I haven't read any of the Ian Fleming books. I don't know why, because you have several of them, don't you?
I don't have them all,
you don't
sadly.
have all of them, but so I need to read those. But Charlie Higson builds James Bond into the Ian Fleming character, basically. And
I think they were going to make some movies out of it. I don't know, but I don't know
how many elements, since I haven't read the Ian Fleming novels, I don't know how many elements he took directly from Ian Fleming, like things that were mentioned in the Ian Fleming novels, and just expanded upon those. But Skyfall, I don't know, it was like, to me it felt like they had read the Charlie Higson books, because he really talks about James Bond growing up as a kid, you know. I mean, yeah, and it was sort of just references to that. If you guys haven't seen Skyfall, like, what are you doing? Because it's just so good. It's absolutely
it's your favorite
everything.
movie, and you love Silver, the villain, and it was a great James Bond film in.
He was the best villain. He's just creepy.
Yeah, because, I mean, they had Sam Mendes directing it, and it was very much... You know, there's a couple of elements with it that are just like, a little bit disingenuous. But, you know, it's overall, it's a great film.
Yeah.
It's a really great film.
So, because it was so good, and I think it was even up for an Oscar, wasn't it?
I think the music, Adele... did the theme.
Yeah, and I remember it was either up for one or like everybody was saying it should have been up for one and like really disgusted that it had been snubbed.
Well, James Bond movies, they're chewing gum cinema.
Most of the time, but Skyfall wasn't. Skyfall was such a good story beginning to end, and the acting was phenomenal. I mean, Javier Bardem was unbelievable.
There's a lot of people who say, you haven't seen The Dark Knight.
No.
Just the Batman thing.
No, I haven't.
People say the writing was ripped off of it. The whole kind of thing was ripped
off of The Dark Knight?
Yes.
Okay.
Because if you look at Batman and James Bond...
Yeah, their parents were killed.
Yes, and they both got gadgets.
Yeah,
except one doesn't wear a costume. You know, if you don't count the tux or whatever, you know.
Yeah, no, I've always thought that. Which one was written first?
I think The Dark Knight came out.
No, it was Batman. Was he created before James Bond?
I don't know, actually.
Yeah.
No, I don't think he was. I'm not sure on that.
Someone let us know.
Someone let us know, yeah, because...
No, I don't
think Batman was created... I think Batman was created because of James Bond.
I mean, Batman's the only...
And they were like, we'll put him in he's a superhero who saves the city all the time.
Batman's the only superhero who doesn't have any superpowers.
He's just a guy with gadgets and money.
Yeah, with a rich guy with parents who were murdered.
He has a cool car, you know.
And so and the villains are very, like, comic booky.
Yes.
Like, they're comic booky
Bond
in
villains.
James Bond. Yeah, they're very comic booky in James Bond.
And they're trying to get away from that. So I can see people going,
But to me, it's not James Bond without it. It's just not. It's just any other action film.
Yes, no. I mean, there's a lot of, like, Bondian elements you can't get in superhero films or generic action films because it's not, they're not going for that. They're just making Die Hard. They're just making...
Yeah.
They're just making the Terminator. The Terminator I can't really say because that's a sci-fi film, but... I don't know, any generic, the Expendables, whatever, it's very much like generic action film. This is a character that's been it's lasted for 50 years in cinema,
Yeah.
Over that, almost 60 now.
But so since Skyfall was so good, it was inevitable that the next film was not going to be as good.
Spectre,
It had a really lot to live up to, in my mind, anyway.
They tried to get it out pretty quick.
It wasn't terrible, but...
It wasn't terrible. It was very run-of-the-mill. It was flat, to me. Everybody says that about Spectre, though. It was very flat.
Yeah.
And there wasn't too much excitement happening in there. But it did introduce Madeline.
Yeah.
As his love interest.
Mm-hmm.
And Blofeld. They were allowed to use Blofeld again after the legal battles.
He was kind of a boring Blofeld, wasn't he?
Yeah, I mean, Christoph Waltz, he was better in No Time to Die.
You mentioned last night that Tom Hardy should have been Blofeld. He would have been amazing Blofeld.
He would have been Blofeld. And I mean, if they do another Blofeld, he's a Blofeld film, I want him. He's the only one who can do it.
He's such a good
Because people say,
actor.
he's going to be James Bond. Yeah, Tom Hardy. It's like, nah, he doesn't want to be James Bond.
Oh, I think anybody would want to be James
Bond. I mean, at this point,
any British actor or American. I've heard Americans going, "Oh, you could have an American James Bond." This is like, no.
I mean, I don't care who plays him, just as long as they stick to the backstory,
Yeah. So anyway, Spectre
was flat.
You know what?
It was kind of just like run of the.
I don't think I've seen it
again.
Like
I've seen it twice, but yeah, it's kind of
I think after this we're gonna have a James Bond or
Daniel Craig marathon.
Yeah. I
we're
just
gonna Casino Royale, Quantum. Yeah, as someone described it, it was like, it was for that kind of like second album.
Do we skip over Quantum?
No, we talked about it. Quantum it suffered from the writer's strike. So it had to kind of like be written as it was being filmed.
Yeah.
And, and Mark Foster's directing style didn't really, and the editing was jumpy, and there was a lot of kind of weird artsy stuff in it that you didn't really see in a James Bond film.
Yeah.
To me, No Time to Die had more of a, I don't know, the directing, it had a different feel to it. And it's kind of like, that's what I kind of like about James Bond. It's like, over the years, these directors put a different stamp on the series.
Yeah.
While maintaining, and he did a great job, Cary Fukunaga, who directed No Time to Die. The opening sequence was good. Mm-hmm. I like the opening sequence, and I like the whole kind of, I was a little
bit like, what's going on?
Yeah.
But oh my god, you guys.
it's a great film. You got to go see it.
Yeah. There was a guy in the theater. I was surprised at how few people there were, actually. I mean, we went on a weekday, but it's only been open a couple of days in America, so I really expected there to be more people, but it's probably a COVID thing. I mean, we haven't been to the movies.
It's broken the UK box office records.
We haven't been to the movie. We haven't been to the movie since 2019.
Yeah.
So, because of COVID.
Yes.
So, I guess people are still
not going. Yeah. I mean, it was quite empty. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I figured it was a weekday, so.
But there was a guy down in the front row we could see from our seats that there's a part in the film that is very like, it kind of gets the action going.
It gets the action going.
Yeah.
Because at first it's kind of like, without spoiling it, it's kind of like it's your run of the mill film. It's kind of like nothing's
well,
like,
it's setting the story up.
It's setting the story up. Bond's there. And he's just there, and then the action begins.
And this guy
went and he's just like,
yeah, he starts like rubbing his hands together like Mr. Smithers in the Simpsons. Yes. And he looked at his friends and he was just like, oh yeah.
This is what I'm talking about.
I started cracking up. I don't know why he caught my attention at that moment. I don't know why, because I guess the screen lit the room quite up. It was quite
because it's just like, he's James is living this life,
Yeah.
And then this thing happens, and it's just like, it's like very evil.
Yes. I don't know. It was so funny, but yeah, this was a great film.
Yeah, no, you're gonna love it. Even if you're just a casual James Bond.
Shall we talk a little bit about our criticism of it? Just like without...
What's the criticism?
We both kind of felt like they were trying to cram a bit too much into the one film.
And that's apparently what the critics said too.
Oh, yeah.
This was a long film. It was epic. And it's like fair dues on that, because this was supposed to be released before COVID.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe they extended the running time a little bit because they thought people have been waiting 6 years for this anyway.
Yeah.
Let's do this.
I thought that too, yeah. It does not drag.
It doesn't drag, no. My attention wasn't like,
Jesus, how much longer?
Yeah.
I did look at the clock once, but only because I needed to go to the bathroom.
Well, yeah, that's apparently in some theaters they broke into the film for an intermission.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because it's 2 hours and
43 minutes.
43
it's not quite like Avengers Endgame, which is like 3 hours, 6 minutes.
Yeah, or like Lord of the Rings, any of the Lord of the Rings movies, I think, are like 3 hours each, something like that. But,
yeah, they kind of focused on, Leah Seydoux and Daniel Craig, who play Bond and Madeline, and they told their story well. They had miles better chemistry than they did in Spectre. In Spectre, it was kind of just like, who are you? Oh, I don't know, who are you?
I thought so, too. Yeah, we didn't talk about that after we watched this film. I know, I completely agree. that was a little bit like she seemed too young for him, and seemed
not too young, but just too like surly and just like not interested.
It just seemed forced.
But now it was
they're
like,
all in love, are they? I don't buy it.
They're having fun now. This is, it's like, they're into each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they totally brought their A game with that. So as far as performances go, this was Daniel Craig's best performance as James Bond, even out of Skyfall.
I was a little bit disappointed that Rami Malek wasn't more Javier Bardem. I was just expecting him to be so super, like, just creepy, just like, ugh. I think
he did his best.
Yeah.
And I think he, for me, throughout the movie, he seemed a little bit like flat.
I think it was just the writing. It was not his performance. I don't think.
No, it wasn't. It was the writing. Yeah. And they didn't show enough of him in the thing. Maybe the directing or something. But in the final scene he's in, he cracked it for me. That was it. He was like, okay, yeah, he's actually not bad. He's a pretty good. Well, I mean, not bad, like as in like.
I mean, without giving away too much, and it might, I don't know, but it was quite creepy in the beginning. So I had high expectations. I thought it was going to continue to be that creepy, and it just wasn't, So, if you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. But anyway, really quickly, because we're
going out of time. Yeah, there's no time. No time to die.
What are we thinking now? Because obviously now everybody's
future.
Yeah.
What's going to happen? Daniel Craig's gone. Are we going to go back to the original format? Are we going to get Pierce Brosnan back?
Yeah.
Somebody randomly suggested that. Pierce Brosnan comes back. Yeah. It's like,
okay.
So where have you been? I've been on holiday.
I think he's got a show again. I think he's doing a show. It's like a Western or something, isn't it?
Oh, I think that's finished.
I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't
know. Maybe not. But no, I don't think he's going to return to James Bond, even if they asked him at this point.
No, you mentioned to me, wouldn't I want to see Aidan Turner as Bond?
Turner.
Because you guys, I'm a big Aidan Turner fan. I don't know if he's James Bond to me, as absolutely gorgeous as I think he is. I don't know.
Well, no, you say, I don't know if he's James Bond, but then, like he could beef up for the role. He could,
Yeah.
Stuff he has to do to get, to get in shape for the role.
Yeah.
And then, that's,
But he's so, like, I don't know. Probably because I've seen
very light. I mean, we don't know yet that Barbara Broccoli and Michael G. Wilson are leaving it till next year to just even look for anyone.
Yeah,
because people go, oh, it's Tom Hardy. Tom Hardy's been cast. It's like, no, he hasn't.
I mean, as well, they should. They need to let Daniel sort of receive his praise and his. They need
to judge the, after the oh, no time to die, the praise goes down, and then people, what the fans start to think about the film and how it was, and see, oh, okay, what direction should we go in now?
It doesn't seem to me, though.
What's the future?
You say that, but it doesn't seem to me that
James Bond will return.
That they really take what the fans
they
want
do.
into
No, they.
consideration. It seems like they just kind of
sometimes
we'll
do
figure this out,
and sometimes they don't. But of course, they can't please everybody.
No.
This is...
No, I mean, you were telling me already, people in some forum some James Bond forum or Facebook group or something were already complaining about this film, and it's just like...
Well, yeah, they're gonna complain.
Yes, it doesn't matter. It's such a good film, you guys.
Yeah, it's a great film.
It's just like,
go see it.
There's any way the film would have gone... There would have been somebody out there on their keyboard I'm very upset about this. I do not agree that they should have done it this way at all.
It's not the way I would have done it, but they did it.
Yeah. But anyway, I think we're over time, so do you have anything else to add?
I will say that it was actually the final scene of the film. That was Daniel's idea.
Oh, where did you see that?
Someone told me that.
Someone told you that?
Apparently that was the proviso that he would come back for one more film.
Yeah.
So if he could get to do that.
Oh, okay.
So,
huh.
Yeah.
Is that rumor, or is that...
I'm not sure.
Or is that confirmed?
If
anybody knows what we're talking about...
telling me that, so yeah.
Yeah. Someone's telling me. Who's telling you that?
Because Barbara loved Daniel. She wouldn't let him go.
Yeah. Yeah, because every year he was like, oh, I'm not coming
well,
back.
No,
I'm done with this. Because he kept hurting himself.
Well, after Spectre, he was like, oh, I don't want to do another one. And everybody says, oh, he doesn't want to play it again. Oh, he's done. Oh, he's leaving James Bond.
Well,
he
did
kind of
went, with...
And he was just kind of like,
He did an interview with, I don't know who it was, and they asked him. He literally just got
finished with Spectre.
And was out promoting it, and they were like, oh, are you going to do another one? He was like, no, I don't ever want to
I'd rather slash my wrists.
Yeah.
That's what he'd said. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, yeah, they caught me in a bad moment.
Yeah.
You know? Right now, I'd rather slash my wrists, you know?
Yeah.
But, it's like, after a while, it's like, oh,
Well, he was doing a lot of his own stunts, and he was injuring himself, like, every single time, wasn't he?
Yeah. I mean, he injured himself on this one.
Yeah.
I think he broke his arm or his ankle or something. And it was out for a few months,
So, yeah. I mean...
So, yes.
Yeah,
No Time to Die. Go see it.
Do-do. Do-do-do-do.
Yes. Erica was all excited in the movie theater. She had to do a walk and shoot.
As soon as he walks out at the beginning and shoots, I was just like, yay! Oh my gosh. Okay. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this episode.
Yes.
Let us know if you went and saw No Time to Die and what you thought about it.
If you're a James Bond fan too.
Yeah, or let us know if you're not a James Bond fan.
Yeah, let us know if you're just
boring podcast you've ever heard.
And say no more. No more of this. Get new podcast hosts.
Yeah, but thank you so much for tuning in. As always, we appreciate your support. Be sure to check us out on social media. We're at TButty, TEABUTTY on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, and we will talk to you next time.
Goodbye, Mr. Bond.
Goodbye.